Operation for embossing machine. First, loosen the 4 M12 screws on the upper bearing block. Pry up the upper main shaft. Demount the 2 springs under the upper bearing block. Remove the press blocks on the both sides. Demount the upper blocking block. And in the same way, remove the 4 M12 screws from the lower bearing block and demount the lower bearing block. Second, install embossing pads first, one upper and the other lower, and then install a flat wheel to the lower shaft. An embossing die, flat steel, to the upper shaft. After that, install embossing pads, one upper and the other lower. At last, install the bearing blocks, screws, press blocks, and springs. Third, adjust the lower guide plate to make it 0.5 mm from the lower die up and down. Fourth, put the flat steel material to be embossed into the embossing machine. Adjust the front feeding mechanism. The upper and lower aligning mechanism. And the left and right aligning mechanism. To align the flat steel with the center of the die, load the baffle plates on the both sides and adjust the flat steel to a horizontal level. Fifth, adjust the upper guide plate of the embossing machine to make it 0.5 to 1 mm from the flat steel. Press the guide plate tightly. Make the upper die to press downwards by both hand wheels. Press the flat steel tightly and then measure what size there is from the upside of the upper bearing block to the top of the main side plate cabinet by a caliper. Sixth, take out the flat steel. Continue to press the die downwards. Adjust the screw washers attached to the machine. The size of the 4 screw washers should be larger 1.2 to 1.5 mm than the previous measured size. And then put them onto the 4 corners on the upper bearing block. Then loosen 2 M20 screws. Seventh, turn on the right switch of the power supply to power on. Adjust the frequency modulation potentiometer to 10 to 15. Press the clockwise inching button. Feed the material to be embossed to try to embossing it a little. Press the reverse button. Take it out and observe if the button is in the center and the depth is acceptable or not. If acceptable, it can try embossing. Try the first few bars of the steel with respect to their pattern depth, horizontality of the flat steel, pattern centering, and after they are acceptable, it can speed up. If it bends towards the left or right in the process of embossing, the adjusting method is continuing to increase the size of the left screw washer by 0.1 to 0.3 mm, or reducing the right size if it bends towards the left. If it bends towards the upper or lower, the upper and lower aligning mechanism can be adjusted by adjusting the upper roller upwards or the lower roller downwards in case the material bends towards the upper. If embossing square steel, it needs to loosen the front 2 M12 screws, remove the feeder mechanism, install a square steel rack mechanism, made a V-groove consistent with the upper and lower guide plates and rollers. Fix it with the M12 screws. Then install the D and adjust it in the same procedures as the flat square. If embossing square tube or round steel, it needs to use the extended inner hexagon spanner attached to the machine to remove the 2 M12 screws from the upper guide plate to take out the upper guide plate, and use an 8mm inner hexagon spanner to loosen the 4 M10 screws on both sides to take out the lower guide plate. All the other adjustments are the same as above.